Now, this Xerox adds another 19 pages. The material I gave you today is Donald Lopez's translation of the Heart Sutra. Since last time, we laid out a progression from Buddha to Nāgārjuna to Candrakīrti to Tsong-kha-pa to Jayasheva to Jangya, was it?
Jangya.
Next to Ngawambel then was being sort of scrunched in between there, and various, anybody else? And various 20th century teachers that I've had. I thought it might help to read the Heart Sutra, to assign the Heart Sutra, and it's only 2 pages, and which takes care of Buddha. But that's sort of like Tibetan Buddhism. Tibetan Buddhism is concentrated on Shastra, commentary, distillation. And then I've given you Candrakīrti's commentary on Nāgārjuna's, on the 2nd chapter of Nāgārjuna's treatise in the middle. And along with an outline that is based on Tsong-kha-pa's commentary, but I'm particularly interested, so therefore you're getting Nāgārjuna's, the 2nd chapter of Nāgārjuna's treatise, and you're getting Candrakīrti also, his commentary on it. And last time, when I was talking about my wish that people learn how to apply, how to use the analysis of these middle way analyses and learn how not to find things. Then it occurred to me, well, we could start the course that way. Very untraditional, but we could start the course that way. So you have as an assignment the one for today, and then the one for next time will be to read the Heart Sutra and the analysis of going and coming. It may take us time to catch up, even though the assignments are very short. And you'll see from the Candrakīrti that it will require a great deal of thought, That does happen sometimes. If you just find it's too much, then probably the best thing is to do the first part well. Okay, so in the illumination reading, I want for the time being to jump to page 152. The bottom of the page, Candrakīrti says, the entity of that suchness of dependent arising, are you with me? Namely, the emptiness of, the entity of that is not an object. He says an object for us, whose mental eye is completely covered by the thick cataracts of ignorance. People like me, he's assuming an attitude of humility with regard to the topic, right? He goes on to say, well, I couldn't explain it in dependence on sutra. Sutra's too difficult to understand. I have to rely on somebody else who has understood. It is an object for those who dwell on the higher grounds, the 6th. So, therefore, this question should not be put to us. Anyway, you should speak You should speak with just Buddhas and Bodhisattvas whose mental eye, again it's eye that sees something, is free from the dimming cataracts of ignorance because they have applied the eye medicine of the good perception of emptiness. So he talks about eyes that see objects, he talks about perception of emptiness. And Tsong-kha-pa jumps on this. It says, aha, there is wisdom within the deepest non-dualistic state. Because according to Candrakīrti, that he talks about perception of something. But as I just now with my finger went, perception of something, the problem is that in the deepest meditative equipoise, the wisdom realizing emptiness and emptiness are like in a totally non-dual situation. There's no appearance of subject and object, like my finger going perception of emptiness. Yes?
Just a quick question. When you say non-dual, no appearance of subject and object, is that just no appearance, or that there's an actual collapse between subject and object? I'm not familiar with this, but that Kokomo mentor claims that's a differentiation between Prasangika and Madhyamaka and other forms of Madhyamaka would say that there is a complete collapse of subject and object, rather than just an appearance that there's...
Or a lack of appearance of subject and object.
I was just wondering...
This is a have your cake and eat it too situation, in which within Gelugpa, they want to conceptually stress that there's wisdom and there's emptiness. As indicated by Candrakīrti's talking about object of the mental eye and perception of emptiness. And I think one of the great divides between between Gelugpa and much other of many other Asian systems, well, I don't think we have to limit it to China and Tibet, is that wisdom and emptiness are not being equated. Whereas when you read Morty's book, for instance, I make mistakes like I gave a lecture once at the University of British Columbia and wrote down the wrong thing on the board. And afterwards, the person, I left out just one letter, but since I was talking among Sanskritists, I looked like a total ass, you know? So, come on, wait your time. Wisdom equals emptiness, okay, in other systems. So then you get a ground of reality that is consciousness, that is emptiness, that is a consciousness, and so forth. Whereas Gelug, when it talks about the realization of the ground of reality, or the ground of being, or the ground, what do you want to say, the ground of phenomena? The ground of phenomena is shunyata, and that which realizes is wisdom, and they are not the same thing. Shunyata is permanent, emptiness is permanent, and wisdom is impermanent. Even if wisdom eventually develops to the point where its substantial continuum goes on forever, it is impermanent. Not impermanent in the sense that it will get worse, that it will deteriorate, but that moment by moment it disintegrates. And eventually it remains the same forever. So in some ways, that state is called permanent. But then they say, oh, that really isn't permanent. It's still disintegrating, changing moment by moment, but it never gets worse. Its substantial continuum goes on forever, and from that point of view, it's called permanent. Whereas other people equate the two. Now, after all, when you get down to the direct perception of emptiness, isn't it, at least it's as if the two have collapsed, right? Have become one. As one of my Gelugpa teachers said, they've become more one than the word one could ever indicate. Or are you discovering something that was one all along? You get into those. So, Gelug wants to in its descriptions, separate these. And that's the game they're playing. And it has certain advantages and certain disadvantages. And when you get when somebody starts a game like this, at some point they'll come back and try to gain the advantages of the other side. And the other side is to say that wisdom and emptiness are like water poured in water, which is my old teaching only. They used to say, fresh water poured in fresh water. I guess he was used to debating. If you had dirty water poured into fresh water, at least for a while you could tell this is the dirty water and that's the fresh water. But you take fresh water, take 2 glasses of, the analogy goes about so far, but pour them into one bowl. You can't say this is the water this is the wisdom consciousness and this is emptiness. So they use analogies for the state. But then philosophically, they'll turn around and always talk about it in separate terms. Now, my knowledge of Advaita Vedanta is not very good, but I think if you look in there also, there are at least traditions of not wanting to talk about wisdom, because it's wisdom always of something. And the basic state is not a wisdom of something. You see, when you get these two equated, you can't, can you even speak of wisdom anymore? Shouldn't you just drop out and say that in fundamental state there is no wisdom, because wisdom is always, consciousness is always dualistic. And as I was earlier talking about it, perception of emptiness. What are you going to do? Perception of emptiness. At least you're going to go with 2 of these, right? So, I think it was post-Tsong-kha-pa, somebody who held the position that there's no wisdom within meditative equipoise on emptiness was Tsong-kha-pa. At his time, the Sankhya, direct cognition of emptiness occurs with the first Bodhisattva grant. And on the second up to the beginning of the 8th, and with the first Bodhisattva ground, you overcome all of the artificial effects of destruction. Maybe you can down here. All of the apprehensions of inherent existence onto anything gross are overcome with the first moment of the first Bodhisattva ground. Within the path, so this path of seeing, prior to this is the path of preparation, right? That prior to that is the path of accumulation. And does anyone in the room know at what point, there are various types of irreversibility. And there's an irreversibility, as I remember, that occurs on the path of preparation. There certainly is an irreversibility. You'll never get the artificial obstructions again. Then from the 2nd to the 8th Bodhisattva grounds, we're overcoming the innate affective obstructions. So what's so great about the 6th? Why did we suddenly start talking about wisdom with regard to the 6th? Because you need the wisdom directly realizing the first moment of the wisdom directly realizing emptiness is the beginning of the first Bodhisattva ground. You need to realize emptiness with the meditative stabilization, which is union of providing special insight on the path of preparation. And thus, prior to the path of preparation, you have to realize emptiness. And then it said most, or all sharp Bodhisattvas realize emptiness even before the path of accumulation. But you have to study emptiness now. And so there's some special enhancement of wisdom on the sixth ground that is really not a topic of this course. It's a minor point. That's really why I'm jumping the first section. Then from the 8th, 9th, and 10th grounds, we're overcoming the obstructions from the 11th ground is Buddhist. So, Tsong-kha-pa on page 153, line 4 says, hence, just as when eye medicine is applied, he's saying, hey, look at the example. One's eyes become clearer, but the eyes are not extracted. You see, he's going like this to people who say there is no wisdom in the state of meditative equipoise on emptiness. So by applying the eye medicine, which is perception of emptiness, mental eye becomes clearer, the eye of exalted wisdom is not extracted. Now, of course, you could answer this and say, well, this is just a matter of how you present it in words, right? There really is no wisdom consciousness, but it is, you're using a metaphor, so you're not to carry it over too literally. But, I think in the whole of Candrakīrti's writing, there is no statement that says the wisdom consciousness realizing emptiness. Thus, it becomes highly significant to find anything that even hints that there is a wisdom consciousness realizing emptiness. Certainly, inferential consciousness realizing emptiness. Those words I don't believe I ever used by Candrakīrti. And then he says, if you understand this, you will not be polluted. He's going pretty far here. Tsong-kha-pa is not really one of the big-time bad-mouthers. He usually goes quite lightly on it. Do not be polluted by the bad view consisting in deprecation that there is no exalted wisdom consciousness in a superior meditative equipoise. So you see, this is like a famous place where the line is drawn, where wisdom is not going to equal anything. Okay? So then, down a couple paragraphs where it says answer, because it is difficult even to ascertain the thought of Scripture. So as I was saying, this helps to provide the paradigm for much of Tibetan Buddhism. Or for within Gelugpa, for instance, to rely on commentary rather than to study sutra. I was going to Japan to discuss the Lotus Sutra with colleagues in Buddhist studies and in Christianity. And I asked some Tibetan monks, when are the sutras read? What sutras are read? And one of them said, when we read all of them, when we read the whole canon, you'll have a group of monks, small group or one person, come in and just read the whole canon of sutras. 108 volumes, takes a long time. And or you have a group come in, or I participated in reading once in Bodh Gaya, in which pages, few to you. You get a big enough audience, there aren't too many. In a couple hours you can read the whole canon. But you got 2,000 people there. What I was reading was quite interesting. You're reading it out loud, you're hearing things that other people are reading, is reading of the sutras. Whereas in Japan, here, this was a lotus. How many groups have the Lotus Sutra as their basis? When you get down to it, I don't know if they're reading the whole Lotus Sutra, but they're at least reading extracts. So then, what sutras are read? Once that you get to the completely negative side, sutras aren't read in Tibet. What are? The Heart Sutra is read. 2 pages. It's used at the beginning of discourses to keep away obstacles. As in Japan, China. What else?
Nagarjuna seems to.
But within the Nagarjuna, the Sutra Unraveling the Thought, it's passages from the 6th and 7th chapters, and within them, it's not even the majority of those chapters. It's a few lines from the 6th, and I would say no more than a quarter or a third of the 7th. Those are studied very closely.
A lot of Tibetan commentators don't so much read original sources, but read previous authors quoting original sources. And I've noticed that a lot of the quotes that we've been digging out in later sources seem to be quoting primarily the Compendium of Sutra and the Compendium of Instructions, Nāgārjuna and Shanti.
Yeah, I think so. Even what you do, even the quotes that you do deal with, they do deal with quotes, are to be found in secondary literature, either in India or in Tibet. So then it'll become interesting to see when people dig out and find quotes themselves. There's a little bit of this in the section on the Prophecies of Nagarjuna. So sometimes when our Buddhist and Christian group meets, probably was its last meeting, we met 7 times, they'll say, well, of course, you're most interested in what Buddha taught. Almost a moot point. It's a bit of a prejudice from Protestant theology, isn't it? That the earlier, what Jesus actually taught and so forth is what you should be paying attention to. I guess. And some people have looked at Tibet that way. It's only interesting in terms of what it can show us about India. Which is, to me, it's ridiculous. Why not just study Tibet fluidity? And as Carl Bielefeld and I said at one conference, maybe what's later is better than what was earlier. So, then, in stanza number 3, since with scripture as well as reasoning, Nāgārjuna taught how those 6-gram bodhisattvas realized the very profound doctrine of emptiness. So, the reasoning, particularly, he set forth in his treatise on the middle, which, as we said last time, has 27 chapters of many and various reasonings, even within one chapter. The scriptures, interestingly enough, some people Tibetans have pointed out statements in Nāgārjuna's 27 chapters that come from sutras, that are distillations of sutra passages. That's one place. The other is Nāgārjuna's Sutra Samuccaya, his compendium of sutra. It hasn't been published yet, but Ichishima in Japan translated it. And in fact, I was encouraging him to get it out soon. Now, does sutra set forth reasonings proving emptiness? Nāgārjuna certainly did. But did Buddha? Again, very interesting to begin with the thesis that Buddha doesn't, and then see if you can find any exception. You see? So you see, in the development of Indian Buddhism, there was a movement toward reasoning. And Nāgārjuna took the meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom sutras, such as the Heart Sutra and so forth, and presented all sorts of reasonings. Now, at the end of the analysis of going and coming, you will see that Candrakīrti cites sutra. And at the bottom, and you'll see declaration rather than reasoning proving. This coming, Venerable Saraswati Putra, is a word of union. You know, coming together, joining to something. I mean, I don't know, not two could be God. This going, Venerable Saraswati Putra, is a word of separation, going to something, right? Where words of union and words of separation are not, the words of superiors are. Non-coming and non-going, and are, not in. Are the coming and going of superiors. Anyway, you'll see, if you read those, there's some declarations that there's no coming and going. It seems more, I don't know, you read sutra that Buddha declared from his special cognition, he declared it, and either you accepted it or you didn't. But then reasoning came to have tremendous importance, such that when I began this course, I said, if I could communicate to you how to use these reasonings to search for and not find objects, I would feel that my purpose was accomplished. Now that I'm, 53 years old, pushing 54, is there any point in staying at the University of Virginia? Things like, come to one's mind. And that would be something that fulfilled the purpose. Purposes get more profound, I think, the older you get. Okay? Question at the bottom. How is it determined that the superior is Aryan, means elevated? Nāgārjuna errorlessly ascertained the meaning of the definitive scriptures, those explaining emptiness. You see, there's tremendous emphasis in Gilpa on reasoning. But here, you can see in this section, there's an appeal to authority. If you sit down with a Gilpa scholar will not say, we appeal to authority. Say, we appeal to reasoning only. So how is it known that Nāgārjuna realized emptiness? We know that because Buddha said so. And then he quotes how many sutras does Tsong-kha-pa quote? He quotes the Descent into Lanka Sutra and the excellent golden light, the great cloud. Well, he actually doesn't. The excellent golden light is only cited because Nāgārjuna's former life, this Lineage youth called Light When Seen by All the World. When the world sees him, everybody likes him, that sort of thing, is mentioned there. It doesn't say he's Nāgārjuna. So it's the great cloud and the great drum and the Manjushri Is that mentioned here? Manjushri, Manjushri Root Tantra, which is a sutra. Candrakīrti cites the descendant of Lanka and the great clap. As I remember, he does not cite the great drum, correct me if I'm wrong, or the Manjushri Root Tantra. Tsong-kha-pa adds them on. So, if you ask a Gelugpa scholar, well, how does this meet back to reasoning? It will be that once you have studied Nāgārjuna and internalized the meanings, you can confirm through your own reasoning that he was right. You can realize emptiness. The important thing is not to confirm that Nāgārjuna was right, but you're being shown a path by a tradition, the authorities with the tradition. But then you are to internalize it to the point where you realize emptiness through your own reason. So what do you think about this story? I would say page 261 is where it begins at the bottom. So let's see, this is note 45. So we're talking about the Great Drum Sutra, which is one of the ones that Nāgārjuna himself brought back. Which says, when the protector called Shakyamuni emerges in this obdurate world realm, you will become the Lichave liked when seen, or liked when seen by all the world. Then, when the average lifespan is 80 years, so what was the average lifespan when Shakyamuni lived?
It was 100.
100. Lifespan is going down. The next Buddha is supposed to appear, Maitreya is supposed to appear. The lifespan is supposed to go down to 10, right, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then back up to, when it gets back up to 100, Maitreya is supposed to come. So when in Kalmuk countries they have a festival inviting Maitreya, they're inviting Maitreya to come early. At the time of the diminishment of the teaching, that would probably be the teaching of the great vehicle, because you see Shakyamuni supposedly taught the great vehicle, and then it disappeared, pretty much disappeared, went to the hinterlands, and then reappeared around the time of Nāgārjuna. After, or with Nāgārjuna, I guess. After the protector Shakyamuni rulers passed away in the water realm. You, who's he talking to? The Lichave youth, like when seen by all the world, is lived at the time of Shakyamuni Buddha. He's talking to somebody in Nāgārjuna's line. Let's get it straight. Who are we quoting? That's why I was asking you, who are we quoting?
I think, is this the earlier Buddha called lamp maker?
Well, one wonders. Oh, you see, I looked up all of these things.
There it is. In your history, which you reconstructed after this.
Okay. Okay, let's see if we can get it down on the blackboard. So we have Nāgārjuna here, right? Who early in that lifetime was called mindful, Sriman. Glorious mindful one. Belden Lochang. Benden Lochang. Benden is Shri. Lo would be Mati. It's not just Sriman. But anyway, glorious mindful one. Who later in that life, same life, correct? Came to be called Nāgārjuna. Obviously, this is not at the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, right? Because Nāgārjuna was born 400 years after Shakyamuni, who only lived 81 years. Nāgārjuna lived 600. So this is 400 AM. Oh, we gotta go up to go past, right? So then, before that is the time of Shakyamuni. At which point, Nāgārjuna, earlier birth, was the leech of a youth, like and seen by all the world. So it's not Shakyamuni Buddha who's talking about Shakyamuni Buddha emerging in the world. Nāgārjuna lived 400 to 1000 AN after the Nirvana. And in 1100 AN, he was, right? He goes to the blissful Pure Land. Dying after 100 years, he'll be born in the worldly realm of the blissful Pure Land. We don't know his name yet. Tsong-kha-pa, isn't it? Now we have a Buddha, lamp of the Naga lineage. This is the timeline over here. That's his name. That's the Buddha's name. And Nāgārjuna, this previous life of Nāgārjuna, made a wish. To proclaim 3 proclamations of excellent doctrine. Shakyamuni himself identifies the leech of a youth in his audience. We're right. Right? Called like one seen by all the world. As a rebirth of Naga king called Naga of great effort, who lived at the time of lamp of the Naga lineage. So, this is his name. I hope somebody writes this down for me. Also in his audience are Vimalaprabha in Shakyamuni's audience in Kaundinya. Shakyamuni Buddha identifies Vimalaprabha as the rebirth of the king, of the wife of the king, Naga of great effort, and foretells that in the future she will be reborn as a princess in a family of King Udayana in a city that Nāgārjuna will visit. So we get a message of, 1, the importance of a wish over huge periods of time. 2, that people who are related in some important ways come to be related again in the future. He foretells that Kaundinya will become the great Buddhist king Ashoka. So there are 3 people, right, in Shakyamuni Buddha's presence here are being identified. The leech of a youth, life consumed by all the world, Sarvaloka Priya Darshana. There is Vimalaprabha in Kaundinya. Life consumed by all the world is going to be born later as Nāgārjuna, who will visit the city, and he will meet up with Vimalaprabha, who not only is related to Nāgārjuna in the sense that she's in the audience of Shakyamuni Buddha, but she was his wife a long time ago, when Nāgārjuna was the king called Nāgārjuna. Convenient, we are not told what he was before, right? We're only told that in the future, he's going to be the great Buddhist king of Ashoka. Also, another Buddha called Lampmaker foretells, now this must be our original prophecy that we're reading,
Yes.
foretells that a prince who is in his audience will later take birth in Lineage clan, we call like the mother world, which time will come to be the right new Shakyamuni Buddha. We know that. The Buddha Lampmaker, on the bottom of page 261, when the protector, you will become the Lichavi like when seen. Oh! So, does Lampmaker come somewhere in here? Dipangara? Must be. Between Lamp the Naga lineage. And he speaks to somebody who will become Nāgārjuna. Name unknown, right?
Right.
You with me? Because at the beginning of note 45, he says, when the protector called Shakyamuni emerges in the Zapdur world, you will become the Lichavi like when seen. You. So that means that Lichavi like when seen by all the world was in this earlier Buddha's retina. Buddha Lampmaker explains that after the death of Shakyamuni and at a time when the teaching of Mahayana has deteriorated, the prince will take birth as Nāgārjuna and take the vows of monkhood, at which point he will be called Lochan. Benden Lochan. Sriman, I don't know what Lochan. In another setting, the presence of a group of bodhisattvas, including like when seen by all the world, that's at the time of Shakyamuni, right? Shakyamuni Buddha speaks to Mahakāshyapa about the future rebirth of like when seen in the world as Nāgārjuna. He explains that like when seen in the world will be born in the Shakya clan, in the family lineage called Kayaguri, in a village called, in a district called Ayodhya, and next word is the Golden. Shakyamuni will be a 7th ground Bodhisattva. We're getting it straight, huh? Shakyamuni explains that Nāgārjuna will actually be a 7th ground Bodhisattva, attaining the 8th ground in that lifetime, but will assume the aspect of a common being. That means who newly attains the 1st ground. So he'll look to other people as if he's attaining the 1st Bodhisattva ground. You can see how discrepancies, in myriad scriptures are being explained away on one hand. Thus, and then this is the story of Nāgārjuna, the 3-part proclamations of doctrine. So then after, next paragraph, down on 263, the second paragraph, Shakyamuni foretells that after like when seen by the world's life is Nāgārjuna, be reborn in blissful pure land. We got that. From which he will emit a magical emanation to the joyous pure land. God, why? In order to question the undaunted Ajita, protector of Maitreya about the great Brahma Sutra. Shakyamuni then prophesies Nāgārjuna's enlightenment after more than 62 aeons. 62 aeons later. Because remember, he was the 7th ground Bodhisattva who attained the 8th ground, even though he looked like a common being who attained the 1st ground. You're a so-called common being if you've just achieved the path of preparation, which shows that we're so-common. 22, which I guess, why not? 62 aeons later, he attains enlightenment. As Buddha, attains Buddha. It's great, isn't it? Isn't it? Just in one way it's amusing, another way it's magical, and it's you're imagining, it gets you out into a mythic, or what do you say, a storyteller, right? In a land known as very pure love. Now, about the Buddha whom Nāgārjuna will become, Shakyamuni says that he will live for 15 intermediate aeons. Now this is just 62 aeons. This is it 15 intermediate aeons. Intermediate aeons, isn't it groups of 20 each? Yes. There are intermediate aeons, and it takes 20 intermediate aeons to form the world system. 20 intermediate aeons does it last. Over 20 intermediate aeons is it destroyed. And then there are 20 intermediate aeons of vacuity. And the intermediate aeons, I don't know how many aeons they're composed of. But they're just composed of aeons. And it was 62 of those aeons later that he was going to attain Buddhahood. And then he was going to live for 15 of those larger units of aeons. It's quite a, in Tantra you imagine a purified state, and here you're being drawn into imagining purified state. So to be born in lands called manifested liking doctrine and so forth, that'd be a neat place to be reborn, right? What is our world called? I know our era is called the era of weapons. Tsong-kha-pa. Tsong-kha-pa, certainly is. They speak of the outdoor world. That those places will be without hearers, boo. So there you realize and boarders, being non-Buddhists, boarders, will be without the absence of leisure, for the branches of darkness will have many bodhisattvas and be adorned always with pleasant sounds. Wow! That even after that Buddha passes away, his teaching will remain for 1,010 million years, as opposed to Shakyamuni Buddhas, where it's, units of, there are 5 units, and whether it's 5 units of 500 or 5 units of 1,000 is the question. So the continued the being became Nāgārjuna is thereby said to have had an illustrious history dating back to the earlier Buddha, lamp of the Naga lineage. I was not wrong. Through the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, through his 600-year lifetime as Nāgārjuna, straight along the future when he become a Buddha, and actually through to his own teaching. So you see, a lot of people say, well, Buddhists, individual lives don't mean anything in Buddhism. Individual lives mean, tremendous amount. And individual events don't mean anything in Buddhism. Ridiculous. The event of Nāgārjuna's wish, made way back here, whenever that was, that led to his being in the presence of the Buddha lamp maker, that led to his being in the presence of Shakyamuni Buddha, that led to his finally his lifetime as Nāgārjuna, that in time will lead to his rebirth from Pure Land, that in time will lead to his enlightenment, that in time will lead to his teaching, and that in time will lead to his teaching remaining for a long time. So this is the kind of context in which the teaching on emptiness is introduced. You're told about the greatness of the author and the greatness of the teaching. And of course, we often don't want to be dragged into something by the advertisement, right? I mean, what the hell? How are you going to keep from buying a lousy car or a computer? Especially in the realm of religion. And of course, it's especially odd given that these same scholars will claim that the appeal is entirely to reason. Now, we have the problem that Nāgārjuna, did he achieve the first ground? Did he achieve the 8th ground? And then the problem is that according to the Tantra system, he achieved Buddhahood in this lifetime. Because as the Dalai Lama said, if Nāgārjuna didn't achieve Buddhahood in this lifetime, then there wouldn't be anyone who did. That was worded negatively, you see. So then he must have. But so then you have a triple perspective, right? And a double guise. Really, what? Was he someone who was a common being and achieved Buddhahood in that lifetime? Probably. Because that would be the jewel-like person. You have to be a common being and go all the way to Buddhahood in one lifetime. And he put on the guise of somebody who, you all right?
Yes.
Well, common being who achieved the first ground, and of a 7th grounder who achieved the 8th ground.
So you put on the guise both of being
Both.
born as a common being and being born as a 7th grounder.
Who actually was a common being. But instead of showing that he achieved Buddhahood, he pretended he achieved the first ground. And then he put on the guise of being born as a 7th grounder who achieved the 8th ground, right? So actually, I guess there's only one guise in terms of birth. One truth and one guise.
It's kind of started me thinking about if this is sort of advertisement for a system, why would anybody join if it takes 62 units? I mean,
Well, maybe that's why you're told that in the Tantra system, they achieved enlightenment in this lifetime. So that, after you set out this vivid imagination, the imagination, I don't know, does your imagination turn on to that at all? I mean, can you just play with it without feeling, oh, I'm being deceived? Because you see, then you're imagining these Buddhas in the past and the teaching, and somebody doing something makes a wish that the force of that wish goes through all of these many lifetimes and into the future. Maybe that's why they make sure that you know that achieve Buddhahood in this life. Although it's said that the tantric path is not for those who cannot stand the long path. It's for those, right, whose compassion is so great that they just want to achieve it more quickly, which is interesting. Then, identification of those who are vessels. Well, I think we better read this, go on from there next time. And I didn't read so for next time, we'll be going through to, what? Goes on page 162, 155 to 162. In illumination. So you've already done that. That should be easy to do. Now, I didn't read the Meditation on Emptiness material today. Is that self-explanatory? Because what I'd like to do is to ask you to read that, and any questions you have, bring them in. But we should go on to the analysis of going and coming. after discussing who's a suitable vessel for the analysis of going and coming. And the whole class of Olympia, including myself. Okay?